St Kilda is an inner Melbourne suburb sitting about 6 kilometres south-southeast of the CBD on the edge of Port Phillip Bay. It's well known for its beach, amusement park, clubs, bars, brothels and AFL team. But what makes St Kilda worth talking about on this channel is its density of tram lines, with no point of the suburb being more than about 600 metres from a tram stop, and the majority of houses and businesses considerably closer than that. There are 5 tram routes running through the heart of the suburb, and 3 more skirting along the edge. The main thoroughfare leading from the city is the aptly named St Kilda Road, which feeds several tram routes into the area, splitting in 3 at St Kilda Junction, which we'll take a closer look at in a minute. Route 16 comes through the junction and turns down Fitzroy Street, running around the Esplanade with views of the bay, then heading out east on Carlisle Street. Route 67 goes straight at the junction, bypassing the St Kilda town centre and continuing down St Kilda Road onto Brighton Road. Route 3 follows the 67 as far as Carlisle Street, but then takes the curve to share trackage with Route 16 to the east. However, Route 3 is a bit unusual as it only does this on weekdays. On weekends, it operates as Route 3A, following the path of the 16 around the Esplanade. This is the only Melbourne tram route which has a diversion as part of its normal timetable and reflects the differing travel demands throughout the week. On weekdays, it takes the more direct route to benefit commuters travelling between the southeast and the city, while on weekends, it's aligned to cater for more recreational travel coming closer to the beach, Luna Park, and everything else that the heart of St Kilda has to offer. Next up, we have Route 96, probably one of Melbourne's best known tram routes. It comes in from the city on the alignment of the former St Kilda railway line, which was converted to a tramway in 1987. This section is usually called the Light Rail, which is how it was marketed at the time, and the name kind of stuck. At the site of the former railway terminus, which is still called St Kilda Station and incorporates the original station building, trams turn down Fitzroy Street and run around the Esplanade before diverging from the other routes into Ackland Street. The end of Ackland Street was pedestrianised in 2016, and at the time, local business owners kicked up an enormous fuss that the loss of direct road access and on-street parking would make all their customers vanish. But of course, predictably, the exact opposite happened, and the street is now much more lively and usable than it was before. The final route that comes right into town is Route 12, which is easy to miss as it comes down along the back streets and terminates in this nice tree-lined spot at the end of Park Street. There's a single-track curve from the Route 12 terminus into Fitzroy Street, which is only used occasionally. Then over at the edges of the suburb, we have Routes 5 and 64, which turn east at the junction and run out along Queen's Way, and Route 78, which runs down Chapel Street, crossing the 3 and 16 and terminating down next to the 67. And incidentally, that's the Sandringham railway line over there. Now, I know what you're thinking, St Kilda would be a lot better if it had even more trams, right? Well, up until 1959 there was one more line, and it was operated by the Victorian Railways, not to be confused with the railway operated by the Victorian Railways. The terminus was right outside the railway station, and it then ran along Grey Street, then south down Barclay Street, onto Mitford Street, and then through Elwood and down to Brighton Beach. 2 trams from the line have survived and have been restored, with VR tram number 41 currently on display at the Ballarat Tramway Museum, and number 53 on display at the Melbourne Tram Museum in Hawthorn. Route 16 actually used to terminate in St Kilda, and the bit continuing east was a separate route numbered 69. A lot of people obviously remember this history, and it's this route number which often appears on trams depicted in artworks around the area, as well as being commonly displayed on withdrawn trams. Obviously this is entirely due to the number's connection with local history, and for no other reason. St Kilda Junction is a very bleak but interesting place. It was originally a fairly symmetrical 3-way junction, but in 1969, the line heading to the east was relocated slightly further north onto the newly built Queen's Way, running in a reserved section down the middle. Now, Melbourne has several examples of road centre reservations which are very attractive, lined with trees and featuring ornate overhead wiring poles. However, if you want to see trams running through Melbourne's own slice of 1960s urban dystopia, look no further than Queen's Way. This section of line, along with the junction itself, really paints a picture of what road-centric urban design looked like in that era. Now, while using road centres for rail alignments might be fine for through operation, they really aren't good places to have stations or stops. This is partly because the space taken up by the road itself reduces the catchment area for public transport, but also waiting at a stop in the middle of a busy road is really unpleasant! Which brings me to talk about this, the Queen's Way Upton Road tram stop, which is inexplicably called the Queen's Way stop in many places. This stop has so many quirks I almost made it a separate video. It's accessible only from this staircase coming down from Upton Road, which is only on one side, meaning all passengers on the city-bound platform have to cross the line. But the staircase isn't the only thing that makes this stop inaccessible. The platforms are at ground level, requiring a step up into the tram, And more than half the trams running along here are high floor trams anyway, so there are a total of 3 barriers against wheelchair access here. Thanks, Marcus. The limits of the platforms are defined by signs telling pedestrians not to pass, and the placement of these is quite odd. On the city-bound side, this sign prevents you accessing any part of the tram beyond the first door, while this one suggests it's okay to wander 50-odd metres down that way. However, at least in Melbourne you rarely have to go far for things to improve, and just 800 metres away is this rather attractive alignment down the middle of Dandenong Road, although some of the stops still share the same accessibility issues. Heading back to the junction, the stop here is a fairly unpleasant place surrounded by concrete as far as the eye can see, although brightened up considerably by a mixture of official and unofficial graffiti, which adds plenty of colour and ensures you can't read any of the signs. The line turning into Queen's Way dives on a ramp down under the Punt Road Bridge. An unusual feature at the southern end of the junction is that the points for the line into Fitzroy Street are located about 50 metres back from the actual curve, creating a length of gauntlet track. This is partly because Melbourne trams are required to come to a complete stop at all facing points to visually check the position of the point blades, and if the points were here, that would mean stopping right in the middle of the intersection. Moving them further back not only keeps the intersection clear, but allows the compulsory stop to be completed while waiting for the lights to turn green. It also keeps the actual point blades out of road traffic, reducing maintenance, and makes it safer if a tram driver has to get out to change the points manually. On a normal day, you'll see quite a variety of trams in St Kilda. Routes 5 and 16 are run from Malvern Depot using a mixture of Z3 and D1 class trams. The 3, 64 and 67 are Glen Huntly Depot routes, using mostly B2 class with the occasional Z. Route 96 uses E-class trams provided by Southbank Depot, as well as the C2 class Bumblebees, which are Melbourne's least numerous tram class with only 5 members, all used exclusively on Route 96 running out of Southbank. Lastly, the comparatively quiet routes 12 and 78 are entirely run by our lowest capacity trams, the A-class, running out of Southbank and Kew depots respectively. What this means in terms of accessibility is that only Route 96 uses entirely low-floor trams, along with about half of the 5 and 16, while every other route here is entirely high-floor trams. And that's not to mention other barriers such as ground-level platforms in certain places. So given there are several options, which is the best route to use for travel between St Kilda and the city? Well, while some routes are faster than others, it really comes down more to where you are in St Kilda and where you're going in the city. If we look at the timetables for routes 12, 16 and 96 from Park Street, St Kilda, the 96 is unsurprisingly fastest, taking about 17 minutes to run up the light rail to Southern Cross Station. The 16 takes only fractionally longer to reach Flinders Street Station at about 19 minutes, while the 12 comes in last at 21 minutes to Southern Cross. But that's only a 4-minute difference between the fastest and slowest options, so you should definitely get the 16 if you're headed to the eastern end of the CBD. The 96 is clearly best if you're heading to the western end, but if there's a Route 12 departing 4 or more minutes earlier, that will become your quickest option. I can remember going down to the beach as a kid, and we would always come down on the 16 and go back up the light rail, which I found very exciting, and it was all green B classes then. So that's the tramway paradise that is St Kilda. If you'd like to take a more thorough look around, I have also uploaded a much longer video exploring the area on foot, which you will see a link to on your screen in just one moment. If you enjoy this type of content and would like to support the channel, please check out my Patreon, and thanks for watching.